Welcome to the Church Resource, where we talk about the best resources for pastors, leaders, and lay people. I'm your host, Jeff Oliver. Today, it's a little bit different. I'm going to not look at particular books, but I'm going to help you, pastor, teacher, leader, to look at the books that are already on your shelves. If you're like me, and I hope that I'm different in this, but I tend to think not. But if you're like me, you have lots of books on your shelves, and many of them you have not read. As I go to prepare for this podcast, in fact, I will look over my shelves and think, well, that'd be a good one, or that'd be a good one, and then I might get into it, or I might realize right away, but I've never read this book. It might be one that I was assigned some other time. It might be one that somebody put in my hand. It might be one that I got stacks of books at a conference somewhere, and I've just not gone through those. I was interested at one point, and then, life happens and things get in the way and get busy. But so I'm going to try to help you to read some of the books that are on your shelf. I did a quick Google search, and it came up with more possibilities than I really expected, but there is this one that I wanted to point out to you, and then there's another that I've gone to many times and have worked through in some ways. But so there are two websites that I'm going to feature today. The first is from Chantel Clausen. I hope I'm saying that right. It's chantelclausen.me is her website. And this is she has the 2023 Read Your Bookshelf Challenge. She just wants you to take a look at the books that you already have. Don't go buying something else, because everybody has books that, hey, maybe you've not read, or maybe it wouldn't be a bad thing for you to read it again. So she gives, I think, this is just a clever way to do it. You don't have to follow this plan, but I think that, like many of us, I want a plan. I don't even necessarily want to come up with a plan myself, but if somebody already had a plan for me and had a way for me to do this, so this is in some ways kind of a lighthearted, you might say even silly way to come about finding these books that you are going to be reading this year. In fact, she really only covers each month would have just one book that you're reading. So very easy to complete this challenge. She has a way to do that and actually win something at the end of the year, a giveaway. But let me just tell you about some of the ways that she has. So she says in January, what you're going to do is kick things off by reading a book that starts with the word a or the. And she said it should give you lots of options and a good place to start for the year. So any book on your shelf that starts with a or the. And so you want to just take a look at that book. Second, in February, the prompt is to read a book where the cover or spine is in a complementary color from your January book. So maybe there's I don't even know what the complementary colors are, but if you find out what that is, then maybe that's another Google search for you. But she actually has a tool here, a complementary color generator, if you'd like to use that as well. So the third way that you can select a book is for the month of March. You're going to find the next letter in the alphabet from your February book. If your February book started with a B, you're going to go to a C title and just find that book, read that for the month of March. April is, she says, simple. Just read a book that's in a different genre than your March book. And then we're going to look at, in May, we're going to read a book that is longer than your last one, just more pages. And so you're going to try to push yourself maybe to read longer and longer books, thicker books, get some of those heavy books, under your belt. And so that's a way to do that. I'll give this last one in June. She says it's going to have half as many letters as your May title. So May was a longer book, and now we're looking for a half as many letters in that title for the book in June, and so forth. She goes through the rest of the year to give you prompts, some ways to figure out which books to read. And again, let's focus on the books that are on your shelf, and we can find a way to read 12 more books this year. I think that's just a fun way to do that, and it's helpful to me as I look over my shelf and see so many that are that were not used, that were not looked at and read. So the second website that I want to tell you about is challies.com. I've mentioned him here before in the way of book reviews and some of the things he said he has said about books. And so this is his annual challenge. And in fact, he didn't come up with one for 23, but I've done it years back. He's got them on his website now and you just go to challies.com. That's CHALLIES, challies.com, and he will give you some, again, prompts of what kind of books to read. He says that everybody might say that they're an avid reader. So what does that mean? He says, I'm going to give you ways to do that and kind of prove what you're talking about there. So he says if your pace is one book every 4 weeks, then you're going to read 13 books in a year. That is called the light reader. If you're going to read a book every 2 weeks, that's 26 books in a year. He calls that the avid reader. If you read a book a week, he talks and gives you a list of prompts there of types of books to read, and that's for the committed reader. The obsessed reader is going to read 2 books a week, and so that is very difficult for me to do. If you are ready to do that, then more power to you. I totally applaud that, but I think that's a tough read. It obviously is for, as he calls it, an obsessed reader. Let me give you some examples too. And if you are a light reader, for example, he's going to ask you to read a book published in 2021 or 2022. These are obviously very recent books he wants you to look at. Then he talks about, maybe also a book published prior to 2000. There ought to be a book written by a woman, a book that is an autobiography, and then a book for children or teens, a book about suffering, a book about Christian living. And so he gives that. Those are not all of them, but those are the 13 prompts that he gives you, suggestions for if you're a light reader, you want to read roughly one a month, one every 4 weeks, that those are the books. And then if you're an avid reader, you're going to add to the light reader and then read these: a book written by a Puritan, a book about a current issue, a book by an author who was alive in the 1800s, a book about theology, a book about a book of the Bible, and so forth. If you read 26 books in a year, that's great, and that's more than you might have read just doing it on your own and searching your own shelves. Again, I'm gonna recommend and challenge you to stick to the books that are on your shelves. If you're like me, you've got lots and lots of books there, plenty of options, choices for you. And then he goes on there to suggest some of the other things if you want to be a one book a week reader, if you want to be a 2 book a week reader, things to try to find, and different books to be able to kind of make your reading more robust. And there are all kinds of topics, all kinds of backgrounds, and you might even end up reading something that's something that you would disagree with. And those are good books to get into because it helps you to understand another side and maybe even strengthen what you believe, or you might be persuaded to change your mind on some things. So I hope these challenges are good. I hope that gives you some direction as you prayerfully consider which resources will best help you and the people who you minister to. Thanks for listening to The Church Resource. Please make sure you give us a review, and if you have any suggestions of resources that you would like us to look at, just email us at thechurchresource@gmail.com.